All right. So today the plan is to talk about information interviews, and then if we have time, I'm gonna break you into groups and ask you guys to talk about what you learned from your career exploration assignments. You know, those two um, career options that you learned, and kind of teach each other about what you learned. And um, then next week we'll do LinkedIn and basics of networking, and then the week after that is going to be interviewing. Now, a quick update. So I have reached out to some alumni for help with presenting to you guys about their career options. I've heard back from two people. So we only have 3 weeks to do that this semester because on Friday, July 3rd, is a holiday we observe for um, the 4th of July. So we will not be able to do 4 like we usually do in a semester because rarely we have a holiday on Friday. Okay, but one person we got hold of, his name is Andrew Gordon. Andrew graduated as a financial econ major from BYU Idaho in 2014, I believe. He was my TA for a year or two. Anyway, so Andrew first worked at Zions Bank and then moved to another firm I can't remember the name of, and then did a uh, MBA at BYU, just graduated and got a job at 3M. You know, the company that's one of the companies that really is growing in this pandemic because they make almost everything we need. So like N95 masks, and it's one of those invisible gigantic companies because pretty much everything you use is made by 3M. So Andrew is going to be one of their revenue analysts at 3M. So anyway, so he'll be one that will present to you toward the end of the semester. And then also I heard back from another alum from BYU Idaho named Patrick Vera. And see, Tyler Partridge met him. Why are you wearing a mask inside, Tyler? You feeling a little sick? Oh, you're not inside. Okay. All right. I mean, you're inside, but not home. Okay. All right. So anyway, um, Patrick works at Bloomberg in their headquarters in New York, and so he's our only alumnus that we've placed at Bloomberg so far, and he's been working tirelessly to expand the BYU Idaho presence at Bloomberg. He's doing very well, and they're very impressed with him. And so anyway, and now I'm waiting to hear back from one other person who's Econ grad, and who's well, I guess I won't tell you about him until I hear back from him. But so my usually I do 2 econ, 2 financial econ. This year I'll have to be a little off-sided because we only have 3 weeks to do this, and so far 2 financial econ got back to me. So I'm gonna schedule 2 and then get an econ for you guys. Okay. All right. Any questions, concerns about what's going on, both in this class or in your semester, in your course planning, or life in general? Like I said, I'm always a great resource for what not to do in dating. So, you know, I made all the mistakes there are in the books. And anyway, yeah, because I was walking around the other day, and you know, a lot of my neighbors my age, their kids are getting ready to become seniors in high school or planning their missions and stuff. You know, my oldest is still in 4th grade, so it's pretty awesome. Yeah. Anyway, okay. No questions or concerns. All right. If then,
I have
yeah,
a
go ahead.
question. The LinkedIn assignment, is that still going to be due tonight?
Well, so yes, I want you to create a LinkedIn profile. Now, next week's lecture hopefully will help you make it better. Okay. So, yeah, I want you to have one ready before we talk about it. That's why, yeah, I want you to do one the week before. Okay. All right. Great question. Okay, all right, then let's talk about, first of all, networking in general. Okay, I don't know if I hope you've heard it enough that you understand how important and valuable and essential and crucial, right, networking is. I can't use enough words, and I can't remember who, but one time this student came in and asked me. He said, "Okay, he did an informational interview with me, and then one thing he asked me was, well, what would you do differently now, looking back at your college experience?" And I thought it was a great question. And one of the key things, so there are two things I told him that I regretted not doing well. One of the key things was networking, and nobody told me about the importance of it, and nobody explained to me how to do it. And coming from a different country into the U.S., I was not able to do much of any of it. Okay? But now, having matured and being in my career for 10 years now, looking back, and also seeing my students leave, succeed, and move on with life. I have now a fairly good network of my own, but also I see truly the importance of networking. Okay, so it's important to do well in school. That's the uh, kind of hard skill you have to have, but the soft skill of networking is just as crucial and probably more so, right? Because you probably have all been told it's not about what you know, it's who you know. And to a great extent, that is true because over 60% of all jobs are filled by connections. Okay, so it's somebody who knows somebody that says, "Hey, we're hiring, and I think you should give this a try." And in fact, I know that even in my own econ department, several cases are like that, right? And I have personally invited people to apply for jobs here. Now, that's true no matter where you go. So that's why networking is important. Now the question is, how do you turn it into an art, right? Because it is an art. You can't. It's very difficult to just reach out to some stranger you've never met and say, "Hey, how about we connect and become contacts," right? And especially for professionals working in good industries or good companies, they probably get connection requests on LinkedIn or via email all the time, right? So how do you make that connection and how do you maintain a relationship? That's another thing, right? Because you can connect with somebody, and even if they add you on LinkedIn, then what? You can't just expect them to somehow reach out to you when they have an opportunity on their hand, or if you see an opportunity with their company, you've never talked to them, you're a LinkedIn contact, and then just expect them to kind of go out of their way to help you. Okay, so um, informational interviews, okay, that is one way to um, build a connection. Okay, now how to maintain the relationship, we'll talk a little bit more when we get to the core on networking next week overall. But informational interviews, the name explains it all, right? It's an interview to get information, usually about a job, a position, or industry, what it's like to work at a specific firm, okay, or how a certain individual, got to where they are today, so you can learn some valuable lessons in planning your future. Um, Now, as a side note, I want to point out that this is becoming more and more crucial for you guys because unfortunately you are being caught in this financial storm, I mean, in this economic storm caused by this weird virus that hit the world so hard and so quickly, right? And so now you're facing even a steeper slope in entering the job market. I hope most of you viewed that university forum yesterday about entering your career during an economic downturn. Brother Moncayo represented the department and talked about this, but he gave some statistics about your earning potentials and the challenges you might face when the times are not good and you have to enter the job market and find a job. So, when you face more challenges, okay, networking will become that much more valuable. And now, informational interviews, okay, there are, so I guess first some statistics. If you just send out resumes to apply for a job, okay, the odds of you to get that job on average is about 1 out of 200. Okay, usually if you just send a resume out to a firm without knowing anybody there, the odds for you to get a job is 1 out of 200. Okay, now through informational interviews, if you have talked to somebody, even though you don't know them very well, but they know you enough through an interview, that odds drops down to 1 out of 12. Okay, so it is a significant improvement, and that's why it's so crucial that you learn how to do these things. Okay, now it starts with reaching out to somebody, and many of you probably don't have a whole lot of contacts in the industry. But what you can do now, okay, there are two things. One is start building your network with those around you, okay, because you're not just buddies in a class to survive a paper together. I made some of my best friends in college, and we still keep in touch. And some of them are in Econ. We've helped each other in grad school and figuring out problems and papers, and just at least bounce ideas off of each other. Or then when we needed help, then we would contact each other about potential job opportunities that we know. Okay, so those around you, okay, view them as friends that can develop a relationship with you for the long term, and don't just think they're of value because, well, one day they might get you a job, or one day they might become your boss, or one day they might become a valuable employee, but genuinely build relationships with those around you. Okay, and those these fellow students one day will become a great network that you can be part of, because you guys have gone through the same program at the same school and moved on with life. Okay, so that's one. The second one is going to be harder, where you have to reach out to professionals that are already in the industries that you're interested, and there again, the easiest way is through the alumni network. Okay, now, if I don't know, many of you know this, but if you log on to the BYU Idaho website and search for the alumni office and go there, they have a list of contacts for different industries that have expressed their willingness to help BYU Idaho students. Okay, so if you go to alumni office, just search for that on the BYU Idaho website, then they will have a list of people from different industries, and they have information about where they are, what their job titles are, and what fields, what majors they're willing to help and they can't help, and then their contact information. So you have a great starting point there to tap into. And now next week, once now you should be building your LinkedIn page, but next week, once we learn how to make your LinkedIn page more professional looking, and what information you should include on there and what you shouldn't, then you can start reaching out to contacts through your either your own contacts or contacts you find through the alumni office. Okay, and several of you have finished your LinkedIn page or already had one and linked with me, and that's great. I hope the rest of you are going to finish that and extend that, because I'm willing to help my students along. So reach out to me, and if you want to really practice, okay, attach a little message. So a couple of you attached a message and kind of practiced, like what we talked about before, of how to reach out to somebody, okay, explaining who you are and why you want to connect with them and what they could potentially help you with. And that's a great way to practice with somebody you know and feel fairly safe. And if I see your message to be extremely weird, I probably will talk to you and tell you about that, right? But anyway, so that's how you start building this network slowly, okay? But Couple things I want you to do once you have these contacts is to maintain your relationship. Okay, and informational interview is a great way to um, build and maintain that relationship. Okay, so there are certain excuse me. I have put a lot of made a lot of information available to you on our Canvas course. I hope every week you don't just come here for an hour and call it good, and you actually go through the different files and video links we have up. Okay, so if you go and watch, there's a couple videos about networking 101 and how to do informational interviews and etc. And so some of the basics about informational interviews that I want to offer you. Okay. Is first of all, why do you want to conduct informational interviews? Well, there are several benefits that you can get from such interviews. For example, again, this is information available to you, so I'm not going to, go super slow so you can write it down. You can find it in the files on Canvas. All this information I'm going to talk about, right? So first of all, you can explore careers and clarify your career goal, right? Because you might think working for Goldman Sachs is something, and then once you talk to somebody working there, you might realize it's something entirely differently. Or that can be true about geographical locations, right? So second is you can expand your professional network, okay? And then also you can build confidence for your job interviews. Because interviewing, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks, is an art, and it takes a lot of practice. You cannot expect yourself to kind of walk into an interview and somehow just knock the ball out of the park and just blow everybody away. There are tricks, and there are certain things that will actually make you interview better, and practice is one of them. Especially practice under low stake and low pressure kind of circumstances. Okay, and also you can through informational interview you can access the most up-to-date career information. Right now, as a department, as the faculty, we do our best to keep in touch with our industry contacts and keep tabs on what's going on, what skills they need, and we've been told by several firms that BYU Idaho's Econ department is on the forefront of changing with the industry demand because we go out, we visit them, we talk to them, and at least annually, if not more frequently, about what are they doing, what are they looking for, right? And so that's why you guys are required to work on RStudio and Python, and we're offering those pop-up courses on Friday to help you sharpen the skills. That's because we went out and found out, hey, companies are using these things, and we used to teach, actually at this moment, most other econ programs in the country are still teaching softwares that were used for 20, 30 years up till just a few years ago, but their students are coming out of their programs with less current of skills than you are, and that gives you an advantage, right? Now, you cannot just rely on your professors to do this for you, especially we cannot cover all the possible industries that you're interested in. So, okay, doing informational interview is a great way for you to say, hey, you've been working at this company that I'm interested in. So what skills can I develop to make me the best candidate for a position here, right? So that's another great benefit, okay? And also you can identify your professional strengths and weaknesses, right? Because by talking to somebody, you might find out, man, that is not the kind of life I want, right? So for example, a grad friend of mine who's also a BYU Idaho alum was working at Charles River Associates, which is a big consulting firm. So he wanted to get into academia when he finished his PhD, but I think I mentioned to you before, when we graduated, the job market was still pretty bad for professor jobs because most universities still had hiring freezes and budget cuts and etc. And so he took a job in the industry. Now, I had lunch with him about a year or two after we both started our jobs, and then talking with him. And sure, his income was extremely impressive, right? He was the guy that told me that he was going to pay his house off in 5 years, and he was making $10,000 of payment on his student loan every month. And so, but then I was talking about his lifestyle. He's how we struggled with writing that dissertation, because that dissertation was like a book, and it took us 3 years to finish writing. He said, "Yeah, I write one now every 4 to 6 months. That's my job because I have contracts with clients. They have questions they want answered. I do research and crunch a lot of data, and then I have to write a report very concisely. And but the length is similar to our dissertation. So what we used to struggle with now is just my life. Like I put in 60 hours a week is a very light week, and that's beautiful. And 80 is the norm. And sometimes I put more hours into that, right? So that can possibly be something that you find out, right? For me, it wasn't necessarily an informational interview, but I was thinking, man, sure, I make a third of this guy's salary, but I like my life because I actually get to see my family. Right? So money never motivated me as much. Now, a lot of you are in financial econ. You might be interested in Wall Street and investment banking and all that because it has this glamorous image in all the financial related fields. And we take, well, this year, we couldn't do it obviously, but we take students to New York City, at least used to every year, and we have contacts on Wall Street. And a lot of times, once those guys describe their lives, students are like, okay, maybe it's not for me, right? Because now I have a contact working on Wall Street that tells me that he works. And this is no joking. He works 100 to 120 hours a week. Like he said, he got married shortly before he started his job. He said, "Yeah, I see my wife twice a week because during the week, every day, I don't get home till about 2 in the morning, and she gets up and is gone before I get up to go to work at 8 a.m. again. And I see her at church, and then I make the effort to see her for like an hour. I come home early and see her for an hour or two on Fridays or Saturdays, and that's it. So, yeah. But anyway, so that might be something you can find out and say, hey, no, that's not how I want to live my life, right? Or you might say, that sounds very exciting. I don't sleep anyway, so why don't I just work and get very well compensated, right? So, and then also, another very valuable thing you can accomplish with the informational interview is that you can obtain critical feedback on your resume and job search goals. Okay, because you can ask your professors, and like I said, we have a lot of experience and contacts, but nothing comes better from somebody who's in the trenches and living that job in that job that you want to have. Right? They can look at you and say, well, you know what? I think you're well prepared and you're a great candidate, and when an opportunity comes up, I'm going to let you know. Or they can say, hey, I think you still need to work on this and that, or your resume probably could use a little bit of work and improvement, right? So those are going to be valuable feedbacks that nobody else can provide, okay? And then finally, you can have that interviewing experience, but also gain visibility, so that people will start knowing who you are out there, right? And so those are great, great benefits you can get from informational interviews. Now, some general guidelines for it is, first of all, you need to identify an occupation, okay, of which industry you want to look into. And then you want to identify people to interview. So you should look, once you have a direction, then look for ways to find contacts. And then for informational interviews, okay, one basic principle is you should never ask for a job. If you tell that person that you're doing an informational interview. Okay, unless at the end of it they say, hey, you know what? I have this opportunity of an internship right now. I really like you. I think you should apply. Then jump on it, of course. But you should never say, hey, so now that you know me, right? How about a job offer or anything? No, that's very inappropriate, right? If you tell them it's informational interview, they'll know what it means, okay? And then you gotta prepare ahead of time, okay? Do not show up and then say, oh, just tell me about your job, right? No, you gotta have a very good plan and a list of solid quality questions and stick to the amount of time you told this individual that you're going to take. Right? Do not take more time than you indicated in your initial contact. Okay, because people's time is valuable. You need to respect that. Okay, and for that interview, if it's in person, I guess it doesn't matter whether it's in person or on the phone or via Zoom. Okay, you should arrive 7 to 10 minutes early, not super early because you don't want to interrupt their day, but you definitely do not want to make them wait for you, right? So arrive at least 7 to 10 minutes early, whether it's virtual or in person, okay? And bring a notebook and a pen. Yeah. Or if you want to have your laptop, I think that's acceptable, but do not use your phone, right? Do not just pull your phone out and act like you're texting. And that's in a professional world, that can be pretty inappropriate and annoying. Okay, so if you want to, you need to take notes. Not if you want to take notes, you need to take notes. Plan on taking notes. That sends the signal that you're taking this very seriously. But do not use your phone to take notes. Okay, this just does not look, or swiping does not look very professional at all, and people cannot tell what you're doing. And if you give them even the slightest bad impression, then that kills the whole purpose of this interview. Okay, uh, of course, be polite and professional. Okay, dress appropriately as a BYU Idaho student or graduate. When you're not sure how you should dress, okay, always overdress. You can remember that as a principle, because unless you've been told, right, specifically, hey, dress casually. I hate, for this to be too formal. You take it formally. Okay, I'd rather you be criticized as, being overdressed than underdressed, because overdressed people will see, hey, you know what, this kid really takes this very seriously. Okay, but underdressing is a total wrong signal. Nate.
So one of the things that I started doing was I wear like a plain shirt, like a plain suit and a tie. Then if I show up and it's too casual, I just take the suit coat and the tie off, and I'm fine.
Yeah, there you go, right? So if you were overdressed, you can always, downgrade a little bit, make it a little casual. But if you are too casual, you cannot make it more formal. Yeah. By the way, that a little bun on the top of your head.
Yeah, I can't get my haircut anywhere still, so
Okay. Yeah, I guess that is a problem. All right. Because I've been looking at this, it's like, is that just not well washed hair or something? Okay. All right. Well, it's the pandemic situation, I guess. We'll let this one slide for now. Okay. Once you can get a haircut, that needs to, you know. Okay. All right. And okay, and other things that you should do during the interview. Okay, be enthusiastic, direct, and concise. Okay, and make good eye contact. Don't beat around the bushes or sound like you have not thought of this. And so you know. Yeah, stop being like what I'm trying to do right now, saying and and like and those things, right? So, and avoid these verbal pauses, and that's why preparation with good questions will help you sound a lot more intelligent and formal. Okay, and then of course bring a polished resume. Okay, now I'm not saying that you should. Just send that puppy out as part of the interview. But if the opportunity arises, okay, then you can give the resume either to ask for feedback, or if they actually say, hey, we have this opportunity available, then you have something that you can provide as part of your presentation of yourself. Okay. So if nothing else, then see if you have time at the end. Just say, hey, would it be appropriate for me to, for you to look over my resume and give me some feedback, right? So always bring a copy of your resume. Now, also you should pick about 12 to 15 questions, okay, and um, and prepare ahead of time, and then adjust as you go according to the time, right? If you told them half an hour and the first 3 questions took 20 minutes, then don't stick to your plan and ask all the rest of the questions. Then you should quickly adjust and say, okay, which ones I should skip, and then which ones I really want to ask, and then prioritize on the spot, right? But do have a plan, okay? Now, in the document, I list at the very end of this module, I'm giving you a list of possible questions you can ask, because oftentimes people say, well, what do I ask, what should I talk about? There are 75 questions in that document I'm providing that are appropriate and relevant and possible to benefit you. So look those over. If you really don't have any specific ideas, then you can choose from this list, but always go prepared and sound intelligent, and also genuine, right? So professional, courteous, and all that. Okay. All right. So that's kind of the basic whys and hows of informational interviews. Questions for me?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you think is the average time for one of these interviews? Like, how much time, how many minutes?
Very good question, right? So I would say it should be at least half an hour, because shorter than that, you're not going to get much out of it, because by the time you introduce each other and get acquainted a little bit, you're not going to have much time to talk about what you want to talk about if it's shorter than half an hour, but it should not be longer than 1 hour. Okay, so when you contact whoever you're trying to interview, ask them. You say, hey, how much time can I take out of your busy schedule? I would like to, right, sit down with you or have a phone call for half an hour, 45 minutes. Is that okay? And then let them tell you if it's okay. Most people understand that they need to give you at least half an hour of their time. Okay, but you should not ever ask for more than an hour, and especially for an informational interview, it shouldn't take more than an hour anyway, right? So yeah, and then prepare questions accordingly with how much time they've agreed to give you. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Now, like I said, you gotta start practicing this, and I do want you to do, as part of your assignments, okay, you have to do 2 informational interviews and turn in a report on those, and there's more information on that in the module, so you can go click on the documents and see. But start thinking ahead about it, and start looking for these potential contacts. So again, start with the industry you're interested in, and then narrow it down to maybe the potential contacts you can reach out, and then reach out to some, and then see if you can get at least 2. Now, don't feel like you're doing this for me or for this class and say, once I have 2, I'm good. But if 5 people get back to you and say they're willing to talk to you, please, by all means, talk to all 5. Okay, you cannot have too many contacts. And later on, we'll talk about internships and other things. But just as a plug-in, one thing that I have truly enjoyed doing as part of my responsibilities as faculty here is to take students on internship expeditions. And if you're not familiar with those, these are programs that we run where we take students to a city, and then we make appointments ahead of time, and students get to meet with a bunch of different professionals and visit their Usually they're companies, and they have some kind of presentation, and oftentimes they involve HR, and so give you a very comprehensive view. And also you are there, you can see and feel what it's like to live in that city, and uh, to get a real sense of life in that city and in a certain industry. These trips are usually heavily subsidized by the university. So when things go back to normal, I hope that's soon, we will start running these trips again. Look for these opportunities and go on at least a couple. And I know that, as a student for you, usually the cost is about just 450, 500 bucks, but it includes airfare and hotel. Usually we're gone for at least 4 or 5 days, and so it's really not, you don't pay, you pay on average about a third of the cost to take you to somewhere and experience these great opportunities. So this is valuable, and we pour a lot of resources, not just money, but our professional contacts and time and preparation, all that. And so look for those opportunities when things go back to normal and take advantage of it, because that can give you a lot of advantage, because depends on where we go. New York City is always super tough. It's super competitive, right? You have to compete against kids from Harvard and Yale and Stanford to get there. But most places we have a pretty good placement rate for internships and jobs. Most people who go on these trips end up having some kind of internship or job offer in that city that they visit. Now, if your dream is to hit New York City and you want to make it there are a couple ways. Okay, we do have students that are working in New York. Um, Most of them get a job with the bank or company they want to work for at a different city first, because it's less competitive. And then once they have some experience and some weight in that company, they request a transfer, and then they go to New York. And so that's how most of them get there. And that's an absolute possible and good way to get there. Now, another way, I've talked about some contacts on Wall Street. Let me tell you about this one that I told you works 100 hours plus every week. He got there because, so I met this kid when he was on his mission. He served his mission in Pullman, Washington, and he's from Taiwan. And I had a Chinese group of members there that I was helping, and so I worked with the missionaries a lot. The church actually started sending Chinese-speaking missionaries to this little college town, and so Tony, this kid, got there, and I felt bad. He served 21 months in one town, so did not get transferred at all for 21 months, but because of his language skills. But anyway, he said, after his mission, he went to BYU and studied finance. And he said, hey, on my mission, I got rejected so much that rejection wasn't an issue anymore. And coming from Taiwan, he didn't really have any contacts in the industry, and he was so young in his program. He didn't have fellow students that had moved on that he knew to help him anyway. So he started applying for internships just cold turkey way, the brute force way. So he would, every day after his schooling, he would sit down and look for any opportunity related to any bank out there, and he created a spreadsheet keeping track of this, and he sent out over 1,200 applications before he got 2 internship offers. And he did one with a small company that no one had heard of the first year, his sophomore year, and then by his junior year he got a job offer at Wells Fargo, their investment banking branch in New York City, and then they made him a job offer to come back after that internship. But he was saying that he would send out these applications. Imagine 1,200 internship applications to get one job, and that's how he made it, right? And you need to have that kind of tenacity and grit to make it, because honestly, coming from BYU Idaho or even BYU, you don't have that strong brand name. BYU has made a much bigger name than us, but still, compared to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Columbia, people view those brands and give those brands value. And you don't have that, so you have to prove yourself otherwise. Okay. Now, one of my contacts at New York City, I like him a lot in particular because he's brutally honest. Okay, whenever we take students to meet with him, he used to work at Deutsche Bank, and he was pretty high up there. And then last year, he started his own company, his own fund. And but he would tell students sitting in that room, said, "Okay, how many of you want to work on Wall Street in New York?" A lot of people raise their hand. He says, "Well, chances are none of you will make it." Okay, and here's why. He'll tell you why. Okay, one thing that he tells the students, or actually two things I appreciate. One is he said, "Look, okay, I don't know BYU Idaho, right? And I know Harvard because I get a lot of Harvard kids. I know what I'm getting, and I don't know BYU Idaho. So, and as far as I know, BYU Idaho is pretty much open enrollment. That means almost everybody who applies will accept. It's not because we have low standards, because we want to give as many people as a chance for education as possible. But he said, because of that, I don't respect your GPA. Okay, because I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm getting. I'll take a Harvard 3.4 over a BYU Idaho 3.8 any day." Okay, and so he said, if you want to make it, you got to impress me. So GPA has to be very high, and that's just one thing. Okay, and then second thing I appreciate him talking about is he said, "Look, a lot of times kids who are members of the church will come to me expecting me to give them a job." He said, "No, if you want me to put my neck out there for you, you have to be more exceptional than my other candidates for me to recommend you." Because he said, if in my firm, he said, if a Jewish guy gets another Jewish guy a job, that's no big deal. If a Catholic guy gets another Catholic girl a job, it's no big deal. But if I recommend you, all of a sudden, it's this, back then when we met him, then the prophet hadn't changed the term yet. He's like, well, then all of a sudden it becomes Mormons trying to help Mormons get a job. He's like, no, I don't want that, right? If I recommend you, it's not going to be because you are of the same faith with me. It's because you are darn exceptional and you're better than anybody else. Okay, so I always appreciated his brutal honesty, because I think BYU Idaho students sometimes don't have a clear view of what it's like out there, especially if you want to make it at the top of your field. It's a lot more than simply being good and being having good grades. There are so many more things you need to do, and that's why I'm so glad we created this class, and I'm hoping you are glad we created this class to kind of give you this kind of information early on. Okay. All right. So, any other questions about what we talked about today? Okay, if not, then for the next 15 minutes, what I want to do is I'll put you into breakout rooms and of 3 or 4, and I want you to take turns to tell each other what you learned with your career exploration activity. Okay, start with one. Just everybody shares one, and they learn, and then if you have time, then do both. But take turns and tell everybody what you learned in your breakout room, and what you find out. Just kind of those questions I ask you to answer on that homework sheet. Okay, and then I'll bring you back for some wrap up. And I'll hop in from room to room to check and see how things are going. Okay? All right, let me make sure the system didn't assign me into a small room. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so take some time and talk about what you learned with each other.